Go ahead and start recording. All
Okay.
right. So we haven't met for 2 weeks, which is just fine. But during the time that we have not met, you all took your strength finder assessment. So what did you think about that? How was that process? Did you think it was weird?
It was interesting.
It was. How'd you like the actual questions?
It makes you think.
You know,
I mean, it makes you really reflect.
yeah, it does. Did you realize that there were, I wanted to answer yes to both sometimes. Did you notice that?
Yes, but then you have to be honest and say, I can't do that.
Well, but what if they both met what I was trying to, what I do? I kind of got off of there thinking, gosh, I'm bipolar in some ways. Like I do this sometimes, I do that sometimes, you know, sometimes it was situational. So did anybody's results surprise them? No, yes?
No, I think mine gave me a good description of myself. I was like, wow. I was able to reflect and say, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, so you felt yours was pretty on point.
Yeah.
I get that as well. But part of, my original major was in psychology.
Yes.
So a lot of these questionnaires like this are very similar.
Yes.
Like they ask the same questions over again, just in different ways.
Correct.
So after I saw the pattern, it kind of, to me, it was, even though I'm trying to be honest, I'm still shading to what I think I am. If that makes any sense.
Yes. Did you find with that psychology background that you were trying to read through the questions and answer things the way you felt the questions would lead you, or
No,
that makes sense?
like the way I expect the test taker to view me.
There you go.
Yeah. So it's like when you're applying for a job and they say take this psych exam.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter whether you do well on it or not, and then they don't call you back. Well, you didn't do well on it. So
Right.
so instinctively you're going to take the test and try to answer it the way you think they're looking for. Like the company is looking for this kind of personality, so I want to shade all of my answers towards that personality.
Yeah, I found that I tried to take it and lead the answers to what type of leader I think I am. Maybe not necessarily what kind of leader I really am. And I mean, I don't think that it lied very much. I think it gave me an awareness into some areas that maybe I didn't realize I had some strengths. Like one of the areas about relationship building, which I definitely do, it said that was one of my 5 themes, but that I work a lot on individualization. And I thought that I maybe did it more as like a group, not necessarily on an individual basis. And I always joke that I have like the hardened heart. I'm like the Grinch, you know, I have the shrinking heart that's very hard, don't let anybody in. And it said that I woo people. And that just kind of made me chuckle, like, really? But I've taken several of those types of personality tests, if you want to call it that. And it was, I thought it was very interesting and difficult. Anybody else find it difficult or see something that you went, really? Well, this week you're going to work on that and or look at that and discuss that. One of the assignments for this week is to Zoom with your group and talk about your strength finders. I'm trying to remember, is that this week? Yeah, I think that's this week.
Yes.
Yeah. So so you might want to get that on the books. Yeah, it's for this week, due by the 22nd. And then we started to get into what great principals do differently. Chapter 1 was the first chapter that you guys were to look at. Was there anything that surprised you there? I thought it was interesting how he talked about, we a lot of times in education look at what isn't good versus what is good, when really we need to just focus on what is good and not look at the negative, because you can get a very skewed look and you can waste your time. We talked last time on the characteristics of an effective leader. And, it's, to me, looking at a leadership role, you really have to know you have to know your personality, you have to know the positives and the negatives. And I say that because we all have negatives, and it's very difficult to recognize those. Now, in the Strength Finder, it didn't necessarily tell you what your worst characteristics were, but you really have to look at, as a person, both. And it's really sometimes difficult to think about, this is all solely based on me. That I joke, but I don't joke in saying that I never knew what my philosophy of education was until I became an administrator. But truly, I really never knew what I would stand for until I became the one and only person in charge, and people were watching my every move. And so you have to think about that as you are going into a leadership role. Anybody ever think that their principal's under a microscope, or assistant principal?
Oh yeah.
Yep. That they can do no right sometimes. I'll give you a perfect example. We have at the high school level advisory, which if you're in the elementary world, that could be considered like homeroom, but we don't have it every day. The middle school world, it could be considered like the character development. Well, in my school, the advisory is where you give out like beginning of the year stuff, you give out report cards, whatever. And it's one of the only times that you have grade specific groupings together. Well, advisory can be a pain in your backside, because seniors will want advisory for like the senior barbecue, but not what do the rest of the grade levels do? In a class, you can't necessarily go on with class because you have seniors, or you have multi-grade levels in your classes. And so advisory becomes a big kind of pain. And what time advisory is when we do have it, because we have students with early release or late arrival, or when is the most impacted time. And we usually have it in the morning, not first thing in the morning. And so this coming week, we have to have an advisory to give out the last bit of locks, because we did not order enough. And if you try to order them in August, the lock people are very much behind. So we are having one this week, and we decided to have it after third period, because third period is the time you can't touch, because that's lunchtime. And, people complain that we've had advisory between first and second every time we've had it. And now they're upset that we have it after third. And you're sort of like, you can't make everybody happy, It's one of those, you just can't make everybody happy, and you feel like, man, I really thought I was doing a good thing. This is going to be a very difficult time to have it. Students aren't going to be used to having it this way, all of that. And then you have to think, you know what, we're going to do what we think is best, and we're going to move on. And that's just all you can do. Because if you try to make everybody happy, you'll make nobody happy. So when you're looking at great, what are the characteristics of a great leader? You have to look at your foundation, your philosophy of education, what are you standing for? What characteristics are those? What are you willing to do? I always say that my drive, I guess I look at that also as what is your drive? And I would say my drive is if my nephews were in that class or in that building, would I be happy with the way things are going? So I don't know if you guys got the same thing from that, or if that shocked you. Some of you are already in leadership roles, so.
No, that's kind of what what I always look at is like, what I want my son in that class.
Mm-hmm.
And then how would I want a school to look for him? Because he has a lot of issues with behaviors.
Mm.
I guess me and my wife both teach, so I don't know if he projects us into the classroom. So when somebody's misbehaving or not, just cutting up and taking away from the instruction time, it stresses him out.
Mm-hmm.
And each teacher has a different philosophy. They allow more conversations than others. So, I've been trying to teach him because sometimes kids are just going to be kids, and you just need to try to tune some things out. But at the same time, is it good for the learning environment? So, I don't know. With the homeroom, we do it as well, and we do it as needed. So we don't do it every day. We don't do it every week. We just do it when we're trying to do stuff by grade level.
Yep.
And I think, whether we do it, first thing in the morning, right after lunch, or last thing in the evening, it doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just got to be done. So.
And we have to go block the parking lot so that kids don't leave. You don't have mass exodus of jumping in their cars and going.
Correct. Right.
Yep. That I never realized that until I came to high school. It was like, oh yeah, these kids drive. Oh, they will go and do that.
Oh yeah.
I released out weeks 9, 10, 11, and 12 in Blackboard. So those are out there. There is a good bit of reading that is involved with that. And I don't want you to freak out and say, oh my gosh, what is she doing to us? Especially if you look starting like week 10 and week 12, a lot of the chapters that are in the textbooks are charts, graphs, pages and pages. In fact, when I was reading them, this is when I taught the class the first time, I was getting my nails done, sitting in the pedicure chair, and the lady next to me who works for Homeland Security looked and asked if I was studying math. And I thought, no, it's school principalship, but it's about, they show a lot of charts and graphs and like floor plans. It's about observing teachers, looking at trends of discipline, just some very different things. So don't freak out when you look at all of those chapters. They are full of pages and pages and pages of charts and graphs. So I just didn't want anybody to freak out, like, oh my gosh, she's going to have us read all of this stuff. And the assignments that are going to be done are out of what great principals do differently. Not to say that the textbooks don't matter. They do matter. We may discuss some of them in our Zoom sessions, but the assignments are going to be out of the chapters for what great principals do differently. So I will caution you on that so you don't freak out and look at it and go, Lord, I'm not going to have a life. Because really up into this point, you should have your cap and your skip submitted. If you don't, I would get those in, and that's just for good pacing. And then you should start working on the PSYOP soon, if you have not already. And that's the last one you have to do. So some of you may be running towards that to say, I'm going to get it done, and let's be done. I see some smiles, so that's a yes. We're running to get it done.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we're running.
You're running to get the semester done, probably.
Yes.
Try not to overload anybody. Anybody looking at going into interviews, jumping into the interview world soon? No, that's okay. You don't have to. Just wanted to also talk about that if you want to. If you are going to jump into that and you want to talk about it with me privately, just shoot me an email. We'll set up a phone time to do it, or even a Zoom time to do it, because that can be sometimes scary when you think about, well, what are they going to ask? Our last week is going to look a little bit about interviewing for you, not necessarily interviewing candidates, like teaching candidates, but if you are going to jump into that world, don't hesitate to let me know, and we can talk privately if you would like to do that. A lot of different districts do interviews for administrators in different ways. Most of them don't start until like February or March. So you might want to look, if you do want to jump in for next school year, you might want to look at your district and see what, or talk to people that have become administrators recently and look to see when that process starts. And again, depending on the district, they do it very differently. My district does, they give you like situations and you have to type and while you're there, and that's just for the first round and not necessarily a face-to-face interview. So if anybody's venturing into that, please let me know. We'll be happy to talk about that as a group, or we can talk about that privately, okay? So I don't want to forget that aspect, which isn't really a part of our class, but I know that sometimes that scares people or worries people if you choose to jump into the next realm. Some people usually ask too, how do I know when I want to leave what I'm currently doing and become an administrator? And the best thing I can tell you is you will know. And that sounds real crazy, but you will know. I've had people say, I'm not ready. And then all of a sudden it's like a light bulb hits and they're like, all right, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Some people it's because a situation has occurred. Some it's because they get the class from you know where and they think something's got to be better. But you will know. You will get this feeling of, all right, I think I've done everything I need to or can here. It's time for me to move on. So if that is coming up, please just don't hesitate to let me know. We are going to finish talking about what your strengths are this week, and then we're going to move into hiring practices, setting the tone, or as a lot of us like to hear the word culture in our building. And then we are going to move into change and constructive discipline, and that sometimes is student discipline, sometimes is staff discipline, which is never a fun conversation. You know, everybody is used to, if you've been in the classroom, you know, anytime, is used to student discipline. But staff discipline can be a whole new ball game. So that's all before Thanksgiving, and talk about difficult conversations. How to sit that staff member down and say, things aren't going very well. People my other administrator friends think I'm a little crazy because I always say I like to fire people. And not that I'm cold-hearted, but at least for me, when I get to that point that I am done. I am ready to fire that person. And education is the only world I know that you have to tell somebody, and I think it's by May 15th is the North Carolina general statute date or something like that. But in my district, you really have to tell them by around spring break, depending on when spring break is, about tax day. You have to tell them, look, you're not going to come back next year. Yet they get to stay in your building and work for another 6 weeks or so. That doesn't happen in any other part of the world. You know, sometimes they're escorted out that day. Sometimes, you know, they get a week or so. No, we let them. We think they're not fit to work with our children, but then they get to finish out the year. So that is also a difficult time to have. So as we get looking forward to those weeks and those Zoom sessions, start thinking about questions you may have about dealing with staff issues. And my intent is to actually send out the email in the middle of the week. You can see how that intent's been going, isn't it? Been great. Because I finally realized last night, crap, I forgot. So you may get it earlier than you want with the Zoom stuff and the topics, but that's one of the things I'm going to work on because I've not been good at that. Everything else going okay? Anybody have any questions? It's just a fast check-in. Thumbs up good, thumbs down bad. Anybody want to talk about a situation that happened in their school this week? You didn't know? We had one Thursday go out in handcuffs and bloody. Yay! Not really. That's what happens when he assaults 2 teachers and the resource officer. Yay! So we get to prepare for a long-term hearing. And when you're talking about student discipline, that is a part that you have to deal with, and that is never fun to make that decision or to deal with that.
I got a question.
Yes.
A question. Was that student on IEP?
No.
Well, it makes it a little easier.
It does. It does. Last year we had a student that it was beginning of May, shot outside of school, shot into an occupied vehicle of our students. Luckily, did not hit anybody. And he had an IEP. He was ID mild. So that tends to be a manifestation for everything because of having a low IQ, not being able to process. But because it was felony charges and safety issues, we were able to long-term him. Our district has Rule 23 or 24. It's called Integrity and Civility, and it's basically violating a North Carolina general statute law in the outside of school world that could impact the safety and security of students in the building. So, but because he had an IEP, we still have to serve him. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he was arrested for murder and is refusing services in jail, refused extended school year for over the summer. And we're actually trying to get in touch with mom to get a meeting on the books because he was 16 years old, was in the 9th grade when this occurred last year. We offered extended school year over the summer to serve him while he was in jail, and he refused. And so when the school year began, we tried to serve him, but he hasn't met the disciplinary criteria for the jail to be able to come out and be served. They consider an education a privilege. So we have to have an IEP meeting to document that we are attempting to serve this young man, but are not able to because of circumstances while he's being incarcerated. And it's really unfortunate and sad, and it's just unfortunate when you see that occur to students. So when this incident happened on Thursday, it actually surrounded his girlfriend. He was he's had a history of anger issues, and I believe, based on some things I've put together from his permanent record, he probably was involved in the juvenile justice system because he spent time at a wilderness camp that typically you can only do if you're involved with the juvenile justice system.
Right.
Even though the juvenile justice records are closed and sealed, so we can't find that out.
You can't just go there. You have to be placed there.
Correct. So the odd thing is this child typically does not have a lot of discipline, and then all of a sudden has an absolute blow up. And so he had a blow up last year and was charged with disorderly conduct on school grounds. We probably could have long-termed him, but we thought this is the only thing that he's been in trouble for, and it wasn't as bad as what happened on Thursday. And then all of a sudden, Thursday occurred, and it surrounded his girlfriend broke up with him because her parents were told that he was being very possessive and possible abusive. And we had parent conferences Thursday until 7 o'clock, and I stayed until like 9:30 watching our video cameras, following him through the day, and then contacted his teachers to find out, was he in class? Because he literally would stalk outside of this, his girlfriend's class, during the middle of class even, trying to get her to come out to talk to him. At the change between third period and fourth period, he stopped her from going into her fourth period classroom. She left and was coming down to the office. He detained her in the stairwell, and a teacher witnessed that, where he basically, I don't want to say held her hostage, but he would not let her leave the stairwell. Then the teacher kind of followed them to, the girl was trying to go to the front office, and our in-school suspension room is right across from the front office. So the teacher kind of followed them, kind of pushed the teacher kind of pushed the girl in the in-school suspension room so that we could get her away from the boy. And the ISS teacher came out to deal with the boy, and the boy decided he was going to talk to his girlfriend no matter what. And so he shoved both teachers out of the way, which they do consider assault. I mean, literally just, shoving them out of the way. Then the resource officer was really just trying to get him to calm down, and did put him in handcuffs, but that was trying to get him to calm down because he was not making good decisions.
Right.
And when the resource officer told him that he was going to take him to jail for what occurred in the stairwell, the kid kicked over the assistant principal's desk with 1 foot. Now, if you think about how heavy like your teacher desk is, same thing for an AP desk. It landed on her. Luckily, she's okay. It hit her foot. She said she was fine. She wasn't limping. We didn't see bruising or anything like that. Now he's in handcuffs. The resource officer, then I don't want to say jumps on him, but jumps on him so that he doesn't start doing things. And then the kids started kicking the resource officer, and our ISS teacher had to go in and help control his legs.
Right.
And it just went from bad to worse in a matter of seconds. The funny thing is, I was on the other side of the wall in an IEP meeting and heard all of this commotion, and I thought it was upstairs. And I'm on the walkie like, is something going on in the foods lab? I hear all this commotion, not having a clue. It was right next door to where I was and what occurred. So unfortunately, this young man is not going to, if the panel decides, the long-term hearing panel decides, the young man will not be able to finish school in a public school in Gaston County. Now, whether he finishes it someplace else is up to that school to enroll him. But those are difficult decisions that you have to make. And those of you that are in elementary school or middle school are probably thinking, thank God, we don't have to deal with that. But I'm sure you also can think of that kindergartner that, fights and you have to help restrain or something like that. It's not something that is just exclusive to high school. I had middle school children that would act that way. And actually Friday night at the football game had just a random stranger asked me if I have bad kids. And I said, I don't have bad kids. I have kids who are the product of bad adult decisions. Because I don't believe that we have bad kids. We have kids that are products of bad adult decisions, whether it's the way an adult has treated them, decisions an adult has made. I don't think that any child is bad. I think that sometimes they just don't know any different, that they weren't shown a good role model or good leader or good way of handling things. So those are the fun things that I've been dealing with in the last, couple of days. But if you have questions or situations that come up like that and don't quite understand it or want to talk about it, let me know. Because nowhere in any of the classes I took, even for my doctorate or even in the classes I teach, do they talk about what do you do when this specific thing happens or that specific thing happens. They don't talk about that. All right. Any other questions? We're getting the timer. Everybody good? All right, next Sunday, same bat time, same bat channel. You need anything, please let me know. Email me, text me. If you guys have Annette Boyd in your group, she has a different name and she got married. But she should have internet connectivity in the next day or two. Okay? All right, let me know how I can help you, and we will talk to you soon, okay? Have a good week.
Thanks.
Not a problem. Bye.
Bye.